This is CGTN, China Global Television Network.
South Sudan rival leaders delay the new government by 100 days. Burkina Faso's leader calls for unity as the country begins 3 days of mourning after an attack on a mining company. And Congolese welcome the 30-year prison sentence given to former militia leader Bosco Ntaganda. Hello and a very warm welcome to Africa Live on CGTN. I'm Lindy Mtonagana in Nairobi. Also coming up this hour. In business, South Africa's manufacturing and business confidence falls and dims the shine off the investment drive. And no let-up in the celebrations as the Springboks Victory Tour heads to Pretoria and Soweto. We start today's program in South Sudan, where President Salva Kiir and rebel leader Riek Machar have another 100 days to form a power-sharing government. It is the second such extension in 18 months, as CGTN's Chamgono explains.
It's the second time the deadline to form a unity government has been pushed back since President Salva Kiir and rebel leader Riek Machar signed a truce last September. Both sides had agreed to a November 12 deadline, but Machar requested for more time to resolve all outstanding issues.
We want to do this right. We want to do it right.
There has been pressure on both Kiir and Machar and other rebel signatories to respect the deadline. The U.S. has previously threatened targeted sanctions and recently said it would review its relationship with Juba if the 12th November deadline is not met.
The Security Council called on parties of the agreement to expedite the process of implementing transitional security arrangements, to continue consultations on the issue of the number and boundaries of states, and to peacefully form the revitalized transitional government of national unity by November the 12th.
The deadline is no longer a subject of contention. Regional leaders involved in the peace process have agreed to extend the pre-transitional period for another 100 days. If formed, President Kiir will be the president, while his long-term rival Machar becomes one of the vice presidents. The two leaders fell out in 2013, sparking a conflict that has left nearly 400,000 dead and displaced close to 4 million people. The 2018 deal has largely stopped the fighting and violence. Chamgono, CGTN.
Meanwhile, an IGAD, or Intergovernmental Authority on Development, meeting is expected over the weekend on the South Sudan peace process. The regional group is expected to work with Uganda, Kenya, Sudan and South Sudan to resolve all outstanding issues. And they will review progress after 50 days. Well, let's get to the very latest now on the ground. We're joined by CGTN's Patrick Oyet, live for us in Juba. Patrick, another delay in the formation of a new government. What's the reaction in Juba?
Yeah, people are talking a lot about this delay. Of course, President Salva Kiir has just actually returned from Kampala a few minutes ago, and people are actually expressing mixed views here. There are a group of people who say that further delay is bad for this peace process because they say they would have loved to see a unity government form now, and that would be a kind of assurance to them that, the war has come to an end. But they fear that any time, anything small can spark off another, violence in the country. Now, there are also those who seem to have now actually, taken the view that the peace deal implementation is a process, it's going to take time, and they say, yes, it is better that they have agreed to extend the period by 3 months. It is definite, they know they can hold them accountable, and also there will be no vacuum. So this is a process, it may delay, and they say the security sector reform is a very serious, part of this peace agreement, and it should first be handled properly, because if that sector is handled properly, then the peace deal will hold. So that is the reaction on the ground, Linda.
And Patrick, when you talk about some people, looking to their leaders for assurance that, this is a time of peace, can you tell us what people have been saying their feelings are with regards to the commitment from their leaders in seeing this peace process through?
This is the worry of the people because, many people are saying they would not even care if they postpone formation of the government by 1 year or 2 years. They would not care if they have assurance that, there will be no fighting. The fear is that the more you keep postponing this peace process or formation of a unity government, then there is a likelihood of violence breaking. Why? Because, for example, now the opposition forces are in a camp, they call it cantonment sites. Now, there are challenges that we are hearing about. The ceasefire monitoring is saying these people who are in the cantonment sites have challenges. For example, food is not getting to them enough, medical supplies is not getting for them enough, other logistics are not getting for them enough. So they are actually not also being paid salaries. These whole things of salaries will come when they are, trained together, redeployed together, and these things are not forthcoming. So there is fear that the more you keep delaying, and these people who are there, they are hoping that the government would be formed, their issues would be resolved so that, they can become regular forces and start also taking care of themselves and their families, and they are just there, and the time keeps being pushed back. So this is the worry, but still there are people who say at least there is a definite time. So there is a time frame, they will wait for that time, and they would like to see the peace process moving forward.
Now, Patrick, South Sudan is also facing a dire humanitarian situation following recent floods. Aid agencies are warning that many will not survive another 100 days if nothing changes. How's the country dealing with these challenges?
It is a very difficult situation for many here because, for example, the UN is reporting that 500,000 people have returned to their own homes from the displaced camps where they were staying. People went home, they started some form of agriculture, cultivating. Some started rearing some of the livestock, but now the floods that we've seen, especially in areas like Maban, even animals are dying. Crops that have been planted have all been destroyed. So again, the UN agencies and other aid agencies are actually asking for aid. They're asking for more money to try to help the situation because the government now does not have much to do. It is complaining of not having enough money even to implement the peace deal. So we don't expect things like, this kind of support in terms of the food to come from the government anymore. So the NGOs are the ones carrying now the burden, and they are also saying they are exhausted, they need more money. So yes, the situation is really dire on the ground, and people were hoping that they would hear at least good news that the government would be formed. It is postponed. So that is the situation.
So 100 more days it is then. Thank you so much, Patrick Oyet, live on the ground for us there in Juba. Now, let's broaden this discussion further. We are joined from Kampala by Termenyang Gatwech, the Executive Director of the Gawar Center for Human Rights and Transitional Justice. Thank you so much for your time. Ter, 18 months down the line and South Sudan remains in a political paralysis. What is the main issue here? And in your view, is there enough commitment from both sides, as well as the international community, to really finalize this peace process?
Well, the main issue we discussed yesterday, for Sudan to have a political solution, there's a need for these two men to have the political will in order for the South Sudanese to have a peace, according to me.
And with 100 more days to go, what do you think will change in this time? I mean, the leaders have already had more than a year, and some would say they achieved very little in that time.
In this 100 days, if the warring parties are not working, I don't think they will achieve more in the peace agreement. Always peace needs a political will. If the political parties are not ready to work together, I don't think, because and also there are some people in Juba, other people don't want peace, others need peace. So to me, it is just a waste of time, and it is just a waste of time, of course. So I think the South Sudanese leaders, they need the political will in order for peace to come to South Sudan.
Now, we know one of the major sticking points was the discussion on security plans for Juba. What is your view on that? It wasn't really included in the statement that came from the discussions.
Yeah, when you look at the revitalization peace agreement that was signed last year in Addis Ababa, you know, it is very clear all the process they should be contained. They should be contained in the areas. But nothing has been done for 8 months, and people were just, there was a question of funding, issue of the funding. The international community, it is supposed to support the peace in terms of implementation. But to me, you know, other issues, it is, we don't know the statistics of army. All these processes, they're supposed to be registered, and it's supposed to be controlled. And in the process, they need to be trained, they need to be screened, and then from there, they need to be emerged as a one-national army. But nothing was be done in those 8 months. So I think it is just, we need to understand also, we have 3 layers in South Sudan. One, we have the IGAD, that is the Intergovernmental Authority on Development, and we have the international community and the South Sudanese community themselves. And they need to understand all these 3 layers in the peace agreement. And also there's a need for Uganda and Sudan to keep the pressure on the peace agreement.
All right. Well, thank you so much for that analysis. That was Ntaganda Twetch joining us live from Kampala.
Images may appear to be identical, but looks can be deceiving. The difference is not always obvious. It has to be discovered. There are always different sides to a story. We put the focus on the details. To see more, to understand better. CGTN. See the difference.
To Burkina Faso now, where the country's president, Riek Machar, has declared 3 days of national mourning. This follows a deadly jihadist attack on gold mine workers that left at least 38 people dead and more than 60 injured. CGTN's Laura Walubengo brings us more.
Burkina Faso is in mourning. The West African state has been struggling to combat surging Islamist violence. The latest attack happened when 5 buses carrying staff from Canadian firm Semafo were ambushed about 40 kilometers from the eastern town of Bungu. President Roch Kabore, in an address to the nation, has declared 3 days of national mourning and ordered for more security reinforcement.
I declare starting November 8th at midnight a 72-hour period of national mourning. During these 72 hours, I invite every Burkinabe citizen to reflect and contemplate in order to strengthen their faith in unity, cohesion, and peace in our country. I have also ordered the recruitment of volunteers for the defense of the country in areas under threat. Only a concerted mobilization of the sons and daughters of the nation, regardless of region, ethnicity, political opinion, or religion confession, can defeat the lawless and faithless murderers who dream of subjugating our country and our beloved people to violence.
Among those wounded in the ambush was a minor. His brother, Pastor Benjamin Compaore, says he was saved by victims who fell on him during the shooting.
He told me that the bullet hit his leg and he fell to the floor. Then others came above him and there were more and more shots. Because the others were on top and he was underneath, God protected him. He got 2 bullets in his legs and in his toes as well. Every day we are worried. There are attacks everywhere, and we are really worried about his situation since he works in Bungu.
Meanwhile, relatives of the victims are distraught as none of them have been allowed to identify the bodies. Most of them are demanding for an official list of the dead and the survivors.
I haven't seen my husband for 2 days. I came here today to see his body and take it with me. What the ministers are saying here doesn't work for me. It won't bring back the dead.
We need our parents' bodies to bury them in dignity. That is all we are asking. Today we're here. You know we're here in Ouagadougou, but we have relatives here and there and spread out all over the country and outside. People call you and say, "We told you he's dead. Have you seen him? What confirmation do you have that he's really dead?" Imagine the stress that we're living through since yesterday. None of us have had any sleep.
The once peaceful nation, Burkina Faso, has been suffering from a rapidly deteriorating security situation. Since 2015, jihadist attacks have left at least 500 people dead, displacing nearly 500,000 others. Laura Walubengo, CGTN.
Still on security matters, in Nigeria, at least 10 soldiers have been killed in an ambush by suspected Boko Haram fighters in Damboa district of Borno State. This according to military sources. The attack also left 9 soldiers severely injured, while the whereabouts of another 12 remain unknown. Fighters loyal to the Islamic State group have claimed responsibility for the killings. The decade-long jihadist insurgency in northeast Nigeria has so far left 35,000 people dead and displaced 2 million others.
My members went with soldiers in the Nuchima area for an operation. Upon arrival, they were ambushed by Boko Haram terrorists. Thank God we succeeded, but they also attacked us and killed some of our security men, because up until now, I have not seen 2 of my members.
For more on this, let's cross now to Dixon Osagie, a security expert who joins us live from our Lagos studios. Dixon, thank you so much for your time. There's been increased incidents of violent attacks in the region, from Mali to Burkina Faso and, of course, even Nigeria. What, in your view, is fueling this rise in insecurity?
Thank you, Lindy. Nice being here. I was listening to the documentary on the lady who says she has not seen her husband for 2 days, and all she could see is the dead body of her husband. I sympathize with her and others who fell to the hands of these human beings with animal behavior, because they just feel that human lives doesn't matter. Until we begin to realize that human lives are irreplaceable, the state of insecurity will continue to be on the high rise in the region. On the on the Burkina Faso incident, I sympathize with the 38 members, the 38 family members who lost their families in line with the Canadian mining duties. And my call for worry is on the journey management applications by the organization. What went wrong? What were the applications put in place? Because until we begin to see the effect of journey management in our various organizations, we will not get things right. The journey director was supposed to have certified the integrity of that journey. The journey manager was supposed to carry out a risk analysis and vulnerability assessment of that journey. What was the report? I would also want the Burkina Faso government to dip into the investigation of this gold mining organization if they are keeping to the rules of the engagement, because you can't pull out a human being to a specific site without carrying out a journey management analysis. Because if you carry out an effective journey management analysis, you'll be able to project the necessary forces that will escort these guys. Were they under a lead and chase escort? Were they under a chase escort, or were they under a lead escort? If they were under a lead and chase escort, that means there's an operational error. What is the operational error? That should be a firepower. So in the nearest time, I want organizations like that to take the effects of journey management as a very, very serious aspect of security management.
I mean, Dixon, you do highlight the need for a vulnerability assessment that needs to take place in organizations like this. But this attack in Burkina Faso does highlight one interesting thing. Why is it that mining companies or these industrial firms are coming under attack?
Okay, all right. The adversaries, sometimes, if they want to strike the enemy, they will go to the strategic center of gravity. The strategic center of gravity in this incident now is the mining site. I don't know what they really want, but maybe they are trying to pass a message to the government or to the miners or the Canadian miners, or maybe the Canadian miners are not taking good care of the environment or the territory or taking good care of the citizens. I don't know what the problem really is, but I think vulnerability assessment is very essential when you are moving troops from citizens or workers from one place to the other, because that is where the executive and the journey management professional needs to come in play to ensure that such incident does not unfold again. Because when we look at history, you will discover that attacks like this has been taking place against our citizens. And these adversaries have seen the loopholes of our security agencies. They have seen the weakness of our security agencies. They believe they can put an attack on the security agencies and succeed. Until our security agencies also rise up to the task and know that their call to duty is to protect the territorial integrity of a given nation, things will continue to go wrong. I see no reasons. Like in the early days while I was in the military, if there's an incident taking place, for example, in 100 kilometers away, once the military start advancing to that location, everybody will disappear because the fear and respect for the military then is in place. But the problem we have now with our national forces is that they've been politicized, and most of these national forces don't care about the survival of the state.
Right.
So the federal government needs to look very critical into the security agencies.
All right, we'll have to leave it there, but thank you very much for that very informative analysis. Dixon Osagir, a security expert, joining us there live from Lagos. Now, the heads of state and government of the West African regional bloc, ECOWAS, are meeting in Niamey, Niger, on the political situation in Guinea-Bissau. The meeting comes on the expiration day of a 48-hour ultimatum issued by President José Mario Vaz to resign or face sanctions. The heads of state want to ensure a smooth transition ahead of the soon coming polls. CGTN's Kelechi Emekalam has more.
President José Mario Vaz has been under intense pressure to vacate office for sacking Prime Minister Aristides Gomes and cabinet members ahead of the elections. Vaz installed a new cabinet, an action widely termed an attempted coup. The political upheaval in Guinea-Bissau has unsettled the international community. The United Nations, the African Union, and the European Union criticized Vaz's actions. But more than the criticism is the threat of sanctions from the West African regional bloc, ECOWAS. Sanctions that could be issued today, being the deadline given for his resignation. Guinea-Bissau was suspended from the bloc in 2012 after a military coup, but ECOWAS has yet to confirm what sort of sanctions the country or its president could face this time round. The polls are due in November 24th, and ECOWAS heads of states are meeting to ensure the country's diplomatic process is not disrupted. Kelechi Emekalam, CGTN Abuja, Nigeria.
Time now for a short break. Here's what's still ahead on the program. Congolese react to the sentencing of former military leader Bosco Ntaganda. And flooding across parts of Somalia displaces close to 300,000 people.
Each day, there are millions of stories. Each one can open new perspectives, new possibilities. Wherever you look, we are there. To see, discover, explore. We put the pieces together to find what really matters to you, all around the world, all around the clock. Our reporters are at home across the globe. From our headquarters in Beijing and production centers in Washington, Nairobi, and London, China Global Television Network. Stories from across the globe, reaching people across the globe. CGTN. See the difference.
number of Congolese citizens have praised the International Criminal Court for handing down a 30-year prison sentence to former militia leader Bosco Ntaganda. They hope the sentence will send a strong message to other warlords that impunity will not be tolerated in the Democratic Republic of Congo. CGTN's Chris Ochamaringa has that report from Kinshasa.
Curious Congolese gather along the streets to read the news. The International Criminal Court's sentence of former militia leader Bosco Ntaganda is one of the big stories. He was sentenced for war crimes including murder, rape and sexual slavery. The court's highest ever punishment was welcomed by many people here.
He deserves to be imprisoned because he massacred our parents and our brothers and sisters in Boni.
If I were the judge, I would have sentenced Ntaganda to life in prison. He should remain there until he dies.
But not everyone is happy about the 30-year sentence the World Court handed down to Ntaganda. Christian Loafa is a former child soldier who fought alongside Bosco Ntaganda in the Union of Congolese Patriots rebel group.
We are not happy with the sentence because there are many other Congolese rebels who have committed war crimes. Bosco Ntaganda was only fighting in Ituri province, but they've handed him 30 years. There are people like Jean-Pierre Bemba who committed worse crimes, but he was only sentenced to 18 years. The ICC isn't fair.
The ICC ruled that the time Ntaganda has served since handing himself in March 2013 will be deducted from the sentence. He has 30 days to appeal against the ruling. Bosco Ntaganda's sentence may offer some relief to the relatives of those killed in the northeastern province of Ituri between 2002 and 2003. But the UN estimates that more than 40 armed groups are operating in the east, and this verdict is unlikely to help end the fighting in that part of the country. Chris Ochamaringa, CGTN, Kinshasa, Democratic Republic of Congo.
Hundreds of migrants have been evacuated by police from a makeshift camp in Paris's Porte de la Chapelle area. This comes as France's Prime Minister Edouard Philippe announced a raft of measures on immigration on Wednesday. Laia Halpern has more from Paris.
This is the aftermath of the police eviction in northeast Paris. In the early hours of Thursday morning, around 600 French officers began clearing the camp. Hundreds of migrants were taken away by bus to emergency accommodation, where their asylum claims will be processed. The last estimates, however, suggest around 3,000 refugees and migrants were living here in tents, though some may have left the area prior to the eviction taking place. Since the closure of the Calais jungle camp in 2016, many refugees have come to Paris. But the clearing of this camp in the capital was perhaps not unexpected, following an announcement by France's Interior Minister on Wednesday.
We cannot accept the dangerous and unhealthy conditions of some migrant camps. After Grand-Sainte, Calais, Nantes in October, we will continue to evacuate the camps, and in particular, we plan to have the camps in northeastern Paris evacuated by the end of the year.
This was part of a number of measures to tighten the country's immigration controls.
Our aim is to make decisions in terms of migration, setting quantitative targets or quotas in the field of professional immigration, putting a package together through integration and through work. Limit the issues that hinder the integration process, for example by reducing taxes on residence permits. And at the same time, our role is to protect family immigration by fighting against certain abuses of our immigration policy, or to reaffirm the requirements, firm and strong requirements, for access to French nationality.
In 2018, France received a record number of asylum requests, almost 123,000 of them. That's an increase of 22% on the previous year. The French government is under pressure to tackle the issue of immigration, especially with the rise in popularity of far-right groups like Marine Le Pen's National Rally. And the government has also called for an overhaul of the EU's efforts to curb the flow of migrants fleeing conflict and poverty in Africa, the Middle East and in Asia. But for the evicted migrants in northeast Paris, it's likely that many of them will end up back here on the Paris streets. Laia Halpern, CGTN, Paris.
Now, the UN Refugee Agency has relocated 54 refugees from Niger to Italy. A first group of 51 was relocated in November last year. Most refugees had previously been in detention in Libya. And there they faced appalling conditions, human rights abuses, and the risk of being caught up in the country's hostilities. UNHCR has evacuated refugees and asylum seekers out of Libya to other countries, including Niger, as well as Rwanda, through the emergency transit operation. 913 people have previously been evacuated out of Libya to Italy since the end of 2017.
Some people I didn't know pushed me into a car. They tied my hands and they blindfolded me. They took me to a place I didn't know with several rooms, and inside there were groups of people of different nationalities.
In Libya, they face terrible conditions, including appalling human rights abuses. UNHCR has evacuated 5,100 refugees from the country since 2017. However, thousands are still at risk. This is why we're calling on more countries to offer places and help us bring people to safety.
Now, flooding across parts of Somalia has displaced close to 300,000 people. Humanitarian agencies say the vast majority of those affected by the floods are children who remain at great risk of contracting waterborne diseases as well as malnutrition. CGTN's Abdulaziz Bello has the story from Mogadishu.
Flooding across parts of Somalia has displaced close to 300,000 people. Hiran, Gedo, Bai and Bakol were some of the hardest hit regions. In Beledweyne, more than 230,000 people moved here for safety after floodwater submerged thousands of homes. Humanitarian agencies say that the vast majority of people affected by floods are children, who remain at great risk of contracting waterborne diseases and malnutrition. Volunteer health groups in the region have pitched camp in populated areas to provide emergency medical assistance to the most vulnerable in society.
I left my home in Hawatako and moved to El Jale because of the floods. Today I come here to seek medical treatment for my sick children.
We have put in place enough contingency measures to counter the spread of diarrhea. The water level has gone down, and this is our biggest fear for now, an outbreak of waterborne diseases. We've warned people not to return to their homes until the floodwater has cleared from the city.
Nearly 3/4 of Beledweyne was affected by latest floods, the second in over a year. Shabelle River broke its banks, flooding into the city center and destroying farmlands. The local hospital was also flooded, forcing medical doctors to seek alternative grounds to operate from.
We've pitched camp near the displacement camps in order to assist the most vulnerable. We cater to between 100 and 120 patients per day, including children and the elderly. So far, we've attended to 480 patients suffering from malaria, diarrhea, and skin diseases.
On Wednesday, the Somali government warned of further rains and floods in the coming days. Locals have been advised not to return back in areas previously hit by flash floods. Authorities in Somalia have been put to task to explain why they have failed to come up with long-term solution to address flooding, especially in riverine areas. The country has two perennial rivers, Juba and Shabelle, that originate from the highlands of Ethiopia. Authorities now say that they will form a task force that will meet with Ethiopian officials to address the recurrent floods. Abdulaziz Bello, CGTN, Mogadishu, Somalia.
You are watching Africa Live. Time now for a short break. We'll be back with more after this.
Africa is the nexus of enterprise, and global business will tell you why it matters.
From the mega investment projects to multi-billion-dollar mergers and acquisitions.
Africa today collects, just in terms of revenues for taxes alone, $545 billion a year. If you take 10% of that and you devote it to the energy sector, problem solved.
All this on Global Business, weekdays at this time on CGTN.
In In your business news, South African business confidence remained weak in October. That's according to a report issued by the country's Chamber of Commerce and Industry. Now, during the month, the country's business confidence index fell to 91.7 from around 92.4 in September. This is the fourth time the index has dipped below the 92-point mark in nearly 8 years. Cash-strapped power utility Eskom's failure to deliver a steady electricity supply has been the main thorn in investor and business confidence in South Africa. Earlier this year, a wave of nationwide blackouts unleashed by the electricity supplier dragged Africa's most industrialized nation into a large contraction, forcing the government to activate a $4 billion bailout for the firm. Still in South Africa, the country is struggling with drought conditions once again. Dam levels are declining fast, causing water shortages in some parts of the country. Now, expected rainfall for this time of year has not come as yet. Instead, South Africa is suffering heat wave conditions. But the high temperatures are creating some humidity, which companies are using to harness water. Sumitra Naidu tells us more.
Aqua Air Africa is a subsidiary company of the Moipone Investment Group. When the company realized there was a crisis, it went out looking for solutions for alternative sources of water.
In 2018, we embarked on building Africa's first atmospheric water generating plant. Atmospheric water generating technology means that we extract humidity from the air, which is then condensed, purified, UV sterilized to produce pure drinking water. So our technology units would be placed in any remote area and you would be able to get access to pure drinking water.
Many countries are suffering severe drought conditions and extreme weather patterns. In South Africa, thousands of villages have little access to water, with dams and lakes running dry, affecting livestock farming too.
We have placed ourselves in a community that definitely, has felt our presence because we are in Garankuwa Industrial Zone. We bought an abandoned factory, turned it around, and employed over 20 people from the community. We've worked with over 38 SMMEs in order to bring our dream alive and to also provide pure drinking water. Initially, we'll be starting with South Africa, where we will be, erecting these kind of atmospheric water generating plants, alongside partnering with, governments, municipalities, NGOs, and everybody who's actually interested in providing pure drinking water, which is actually a basic human right.
The machine runs 24 hours with short 15-minute intervals, producing up to 10,000 litres of water a day. Aqua Air Africa is already using this new technology in some parts. They've also come up with solutions for the corporate sector.
We've got 3 products. We've got the bottled water, we've got the dispensers that are meant for your household and for your offices, and then we've got the commercial and industrial units, which is the one that's sitting outside at the moment, which is the one that can really cater to high volume needs, which would be for your communities.
This seems to be a viable solution to the water crisis, but Machar admits their most important customer, the ordinary man in the street, still struggles with trusting the product, a challenge she's hoping to overcome someday. In the meantime, Aqua Air is hoping to create more awareness about the technology in South Africa and abroad. Sumitra Naidu, CGTN, Johannesburg, South Africa.
Katanga Mining, a big Congolese copper and cobalt producer, will raise around $5.8 billion through a rights issue as part of a debt-for-equity swap with parent company Glencore. Katanga Mining will subsequently owe Glencore $1.5 billion, reducing its debt from $7.7 billion. That's after experiencing setbacks, including a fall in the price of cobalt from record levels of $95,000 per ton in 2018 to around $35,000 now. Glencore, which owns approximately 86.3% of Katanga, had agreed to swap $5.8 billion in debt for equity, which will raise its stake further in the firm. Remaining shareholders will also have the chance to take up the rights issue, but it is not yet clear whether or not they will. The residual debt of $1.5 billion will remain outstanding until 2023. Now, at the opening of the second China International Import Expo, President Xi reiterated China's commitment to being a source of global demand. Xi says China is ready to open its arms to countries to provide more growth and investment opportunities. Our reporter Uche Okoronkwo was there and brings us the following report.
In this one room, a spectacular presentation of the best the world has to offer. From the finest cigars and rum, the latest in cutting-edge technology, to uniquely choreographed dances. Each of the 61 nations present are here to pitch their cultural identity and economic wealth to China's vast market. There is a reason why this year's National Pavilion is especially crowded. Several of the initiatives that China promised would further open up its economy have by and large been put in place. Also, several new relationships have been established. For many of the nations who are here at this expo, this is a green channel or an easier route into China's massive consumer market. For the Dominican Republic, this is a first. The nation only just kicked off diplomatic relations with China in 2018. At the Expo, the Caribbean country is not just selling itself as a promising tourist destination, it is also an exporter of tobacco, pineapples, bananas, and cocoa.
Companies actually from both countries are doing business with rum. We came with the cigars, also the cocoa beans and the coffee. And this year we wanted to actually try with new products. So for example, we brought Larimar, which is a special stone only in the Dominican Republic, and also minerals. So we're expecting actually to increase. And this year, for example, we have been increasing exports from the Dominican Republic to China, and China is being actually one of our main partners in business.
Nations like Russia are on the fast track to hitting $200 billion in trade turnover with China by 2024. They are here to nurture new growth points in their relationship with the country, and the focus has been on innovation, such as this Russian-made presidential state car designed and produced by engineering firm NAMI.
We worked a lot with the Chinese companies, so they support us with some of the parts, for example, or with creating some of the technological parts like multimedia or something like that. And now we're coming here to provide some support from our side, from engineering.
This year, just 8 African nations were at the National Pavilion, including South Africa and Tanzania. China is Africa's largest trading partner. African exports to the country rose to 15% by 2018, from just 3% in 2001. But they still remain low value-added commodity-based goods. Countries like Côte d'Ivoire are trying to change that, seeking a market in China for products such as textiles.
Our textiles are produced in Côte d'Ivoire. They are mostly handmade products which are weaved together using the local materials. Today, I've met with the local Chinese who want the Made in Africa product that is not only good quality, but it's celebrating the African culture and style.
Expo has been touted as a new approach to global trade. It is the world's first national exhibition focusing on imports, symbolic of China's expanding trade liberalization agenda. Uche Okoronkwo, CGTN, Shanghai.
Experts and policymakers from at least 14 East African countries have attended the UN's Economic Commission for Africa annual meeting. The delegates discussed ways of creating a unified market, regional macroeconomics and social development. CGTN's Girum Chala reports.
In Eastern Africa, most local currencies remain moderate and inflation has stayed within range since 2018. However, global economic conditions continue posing constant challenge to the performance of the regional economies. The exchange rate fluctuation is one of the problems. On the other hand, observations at this annual meeting point to the fact that East Africa will continue growing by at least 6.4% this year alone. However, experts say this growth must spur investments that will create jobs in sectors like agriculture and infrastructure development. The resolution of political conflict between Ethiopia and Eritrea is hoped to also deliver a boost to growth in the Horn of Africa region. On the other hand, there are already intensified talks here on the rapid formation of a unified market. If and when implemented, this new bloc will help expedite the implementation of the African Continental Free Trade Area in East Africa. Grumjala CGTN, Asmara, Eritrea.
Nigeria's Customs Service has directed that petroleum products should not be supplied to fuel stations within 20 kilometers of the country's borders. It's part of ongoing efforts by the Nigerian government to stop smuggling. Our correspondent Phil Ihaza has more from Abuja.
Controller General of Nigeria's Customs Service, Hamid Ali, says no petroleum product should be discharged in any filling station close to the country's borders, no matter the tank size. The directive is expected to take immediate effect, but customs officials haven't said how long it will be in place. The Nigerian National Petroleum Corporation raised concerns in July that up to 10 million litres of petrol are daily smuggled outside the country across land borders. There's a price disparity of petroleum products being sold in Nigeria when compared to other West African countries. For instance, while the pump price of petrol in Nigeria is around 40 cents per litre, it's sold in other neighboring countries for about $1 per litre. This latest development is likely to affect motorists who live within those border communities, as they'll have to drive longer distances to buy fuel. Nigeria's President Muhammadu Buhari closed the country's land borders in August to curb smuggling activities around the borders and says this will remain the case until next year. Phil Ihaza, CGTN, Abuja.
Well, time now for a short break. Here's what's coming up next. We head to Botswana to take a look at the country's traditional 4-string guitar.
Join us in Global Business and see Africa through our eyes.
Now, the standard guitar is played on 6 strings, but in Botswana, traditional musicians would remove 2 strings to produce a uniquely African sound. Local musician Domeletso Seretsi is reviving the country's traditional 4-string instrument, combining time-honored rhythms with modern influences to produce a culturally rich and refreshing sound. Singing exclusively in his mother tongue, Setswana, the popular artist doesn't shy away from addressing challenging issues. Let's take a look.
I would describe it as Botswana contemporary folk. It's rooted in the traditional rhythms, and the traditional song forms of Botswana. But I bring in my influences, as somebody who grew up on pop, and jazz and classical music and blues and all these other Western influences. But at the very heart of it, at the core of the sound, is just this traditional, cultural heritage. For me, it's really been important to sing in Setswana because it's also a way of keeping the language alive. You meet somebody and says to you, I thought my sense of being Botswana, I thought I lost it all, but I heard your music and I was like, wow, this is what it sounds like to be a Botswana. Like, for me, that was like one of the biggest compliments I've ever heard, is somebody saying your music is the soundtrack to what it is to be a Botswana today. I have a song called Robert, which also happens to be my most, I think, famous song. It's a story about a brother who wants to marry another brother, which is kind of a controversial subject here at home, but I think gradually people are warming up to the subject. It was important that I write a song like that because I believe that it's the function of art to not to make people comfortable all the time and dance, but also to make people think and also to face some of these difficult subjects. For me, music is a feeling, before it's even about words, We talk about how people are numb nowadays, So music, I feel, is just one of those things that allow people to feel. For me, that's beauty.
Well, that was very lovely indeed. Well, we are going to take a short break, and after that, we'll bring you the latest from the world of sports.